everybody, and welcome to ToRAISE Questions, the Doula podcast. I am your host, Sarah Allen Short, and I am with Thérèse Hakoon. Hi, Thérèse.
Hey, Sarah. How are you? Hi, everyone.
Thérèse is Executive Director of ToLabor, which is the sponsor of these podcasts. We're in the mid-30s. We've done 30-some podcasts at this point, and ToLabor is the sponsor of the podcasts. We have really great listenership, and so if you're interested in advertising any type of product or service on this podcast, you could help us cover costs because we pay for a lot of things associated with this. Actually, we have to pay to host. We have to pay for, we're lucky that we don't have to pay for the equipment because our wonderful friend Matt lets us use his recording equipment, but we have to pay for hosting and editing, so production, that sort of thing. So yeah, we could use some.
Well, and here's the thing, just to mention about the looking for, in essence, advertisers. We are getting upward to 30,000 downloads a month. So, it's not like we're trying to tell you to advertise on something that a lot of people aren't listening to. And one of the things, and now I sound like an ad, but I am now going to be an ad for ads.
An ad for the ToRAISE.
One of the things about the podcast advertising is new people are constantly listening. And when your ad is on it, they will hear it even a year from now or 2 years from now or 3 years from now. So it's not like a radio ad or a TV ad where you just, if you happen to be listening, you hear it. And if you happen not to be listening, you didn't hear it. So consider that if you have any interest in possibly supporting us through advertising some product or training or situation that you feel complements.
Advertising a situation.
that complements birth work. Contact us at ToRAISEQuestions@gmail.com and we can go over specifics with you.
Yep. All right, workshops. So quickly, we're finishing up the 2015 schedule. We have a lot of workshops already slated for 2015, but we are adding all the time. Please email ToLaborWorkshops@gmail.com. You'll be in touch with Nicole, who's our workshop coordinator. And she's awesome. She'll help you figure out if it makes sense to bring, if you already are... if there's already a workshop in your area, you can just sign up for it on our website, which is ToLabor.com. But if you would like to have a workshop in your area, she can help you figure that out. So
because
we're all over the country.
Right now we have scheduled Northern Virginia, Richmond, Virginia, Columbus, Ohio, Portland, Oregon, New York City, Beaufort County, South Carolina, Boulder, Colorado, Minneapolis, Chicago, Wilmington, North Carolina, just to name a few for 2015.
And if you are in Santa Fe, Albuquerque, Pacific Northwest, California, those areas, we're looking to add a couple.
Arizona, Texas.
So even if you're not in that area and you want to have one, we still can. But those are areas we're specifically looking for workshop sponsors.
Oh, and Vermont.
And Hawaii. I'd like to do one in Hawaii, please.
Yeah, I haven't been to Hawaii in a long time.
And Barbados. We do one in Bermuda, right? Or Bahamas?
Yeah, Bermuda.
Okay.
Okay, thanks, Sarah, for bringing that up.
Tip of the day. Are we going to try a tip of the week? Do you have one or you want me to do one?
Yeah, do one. Bring it up.
Okay.
What is it?
So my tip of the week was given to me by a doula in Richmond named Brees. And she told me that, a lot of women talk about different scents that they want during birth. They like lavender, they like chamomile or whatever. And she said she had heard that if you put it on a light bulb, it diffuses in the whole room. It makes the scent smell, stronger, longer. Or if you put it on the sheets or something, that it can really help. But she said she thought that was a terrible idea because when the woman goes into transition, often she doesn't like the same smells she liked at another time. And so you want to do something that's very easily removable. And so her suggestion was to put an essential oil or a perfume or a hand lotion if there's some smell the woman likes.
No perfume.
Don't put it on the woman. Don't put it on the woman. Don't put it on a light bulb. Don't put it on the sheets. Put it on a washcloth, a cotton ball, anything that you can remove from the room when she's tired of smelling
Spray bottle with some water in it that, you can just spray it in, but it doesn't
but
stay.
It'll dissipate.
Yeah.
So that's my tip of the week. Let us know if you guys like tips or if you have tips. If you have a tip of the week, pass it on to ToRAISEQuestions@gmail.com. If you think tips of the week are really dumb and you know everything that we're saying and you don't want to hear it, you can email us that, but maybe in a nicer way, because it'll hurt my feelings if you email and say we're really dumb. Okay.
Thanks.
What are we talking about today? THK?
I think SAS is that we are talking about being on call and as a doula. And right now when we're recording, one of the reasons this came up, it's always the topic that I am very honest about in workshops. But one of the reasons it's come up is because we are recording right now during the holiday season time. Many different celebrations will be occurring over these next 4 months. And so it is really a kind of a very acute situation that a lot of doulas find themselves in during the holidays, about being on call and how to handle it. But it's an everyday occurrence and part of this job.
So we have a running list of topics that we sort of consult for ideas, and whenever we have one, we add to it. And it's been on there for a long time, just dealing with being on call, because it is, I think anyone would say, one of the biggest negatives of the job.
Well, and I say it this way, I guess I shouldn't say it this way, but I say it this way in workshops. It just sucks.
It does suck.
It is by far, to me, the worst part of the job. The worst. There is nothing worse to me, and there are so many other things we could discuss that are hard, difficult, but it is the most difficult.
Maybe we should do an episode, things that suck about being a doula, and then things that are awesome about being a doula.
Well, and the point, though, why I feel comfortable in pointing it out is, one is I think it's very important, because I think there's a lot of fluff, and for lack of better way of saying it, a lot of dreaminess around being a doula, and because it's such a, look at the work and the end result. You get to be present when a baby is coming into onto this planet, and you get to see a family emerging in such a way. But there's so much reality around being a doula, and one of which is you're on call, and it is really it puts a strain and a stress potential into your life. And all of that said, though, the reason I'm comfortable also having this conversation is, and being so honest about it, is here I've been on call for over 20 years. And so obviously, if it sucked that badly, I wouldn't have done that. And it can be manageable, and you learn to adjust to it. But it will always be a part of the work that I don't think anybody says, oh yeah, I love being on call.
Being on call.
Yeah. Favorite part of being a doula? Being on call.
Yeah.
No.
The first year that I was a doula, I was contacted by a client who was due December 27th.
Yeah.
And I really, really wanted to take it. I loved the couple. Or she may have even been due December 24th. I can't remember. She ended up having her baby on the 27th or 28th. But I loved the couple and really, really wanted to work with them. Wanted the experience, everything. But I wanted to have, my family celebrates Christmas. There's almost every religion has some kind of holiday going on in the winter solstice season. And I had little kids, and I wanted to celebrate with them. And what I did, I was working with a doula partner at the time who was in the same situation. She wanted births. I can't remember if she'd met the client, but she wanted births. And she had way littler kids. This is Melissa. Shout out to Melissa. You know who you are. She said, I will be on call Christmas morning for you. So from, 5 a.m. until 10 a.m. or 11 a.m. or whatever on Christmas Day, if this client goes into labor, I will go for you, because she had little kids who didn't know what Christmas was. Her kids were, I can't remember if she had 1 or 2 at the time.
I think she had 1.
Maybe 1 kid, and little, like 1 or 2 years old. And it wouldn't make any difference to him. But I was very honored by that, because it still made a difference to her. And I still had so much anxiety about, well, what if she's pushing at 6 a.m. on Christmas morning, and I'm not going to leave her just so that I can go home. And I really struggled a lot with that. It didn't end up being a factor at all, but I just remember that Christmas morning, sitting by my phone like the whole morning and just sort of waiting. I have personally made the decision not to. There's a couple times a year when I don't take clients. And I try not to take clients that are due within about 10 days of Christmas either way. I have made exceptions for that. Actually, probably I say that. I've done that more years than not. There was a time when I had a client due on my son's 5th birthday party. She was like ramping up and prodromaling, and I was, and I've been lucky. I haven't missed anything major. And I feel like, I say this all the time. I feel like on this podcast, I say, if you've been a doula long enough, XYZ thing that we're talking about will happen to you. I feel really lucky.
Yeah.
I haven't, but the threat of it has been almost as stressful as actually missing it.
Well, I think I find it's the stress of worrying about it.
My daughter had a performance, and I had to tell her, honey, I might not be there. And I was, but I always think, what she's going to remember is that I said I might not be there,
Right.
I think about, I have a doula friend who had her son's birthday. I think she had a couple of births. You'll have to help me remember this, because this doula too. She had a couple of births that day, and she was there the whole day, home with her son, his whole birthday. They had dinner together, they had cake, whatever. And then finally at 8:00, she went to a birth, and his dad put him to bed. And then, 15 years later, when he grew up, he was like, you missed my 8th birthday. And she was like, how can you say that? I worked so hard to be there for your 8th birthday. But from his perspective,
it was right
that she missed
it. And that doula never took a birth, told every client from that point on, the doula was me.
I wasn't going to say, because I wasn't sure if you would.
And
want
it actually was a little earlier in the day. No, they know this story. It was a little earlier in the day when I had to leave. It wasn't bedtime, but I had spent the entire day, and we had been celebrating. And anyway, I missed the latter portion of his birthday, and from that birthday on, because he made it known, he didn't wait till his teenage years. He let me know early. I told anybody who was due around January 4th that I could not be available on January 4th.
So just his birthday, or the other kids too? The other kids didn't.
With it was different from child to child, but with him, it was crystal clear to me that I could not be available on that day. There was no way I was ever going to miss his birthday again. And you know what? I never had another birth on January 4th, January 3rd, January 5th, but never again on January 4th. But I made sure my clients knew that, because it was just important. So that's what I want to talk about, is how we do not only living on call, but how do we handle our backup situation or our communication first with our clients. So so one of the things that we try very consciously to do, and I hope works well for you listeners, is we try to cover sort of the left brain side and the right brain side of any answer. So, or the practical side, and then the sort of spiritual, emotional side of any situation, because I feel like one of the unique aspects of the doula career is that it bridges those both. We're giving our clients fact-based, evidence-based information, but we're also providing support. It's a very touchy-feely kind of thing. So I want to talk about this on-call thing from both perspectives too. So from a practical sense and from a sort of emotional sense, how do you deal with it? Where do you want to start? Well, it's something we talk about in workshops. There's actually a question posed to the participants about how they would handle situations such as this. And there isn't a necessarily full right answers. There's facets that are most advisable. The first is about transparency and honesty and communication with clients. So if you, like many, have a circumstance that you know you cannot miss or you do not want to miss, and you have a client who is due right around that time, and you really have to consider plus or minus 2 weeks. So we're talking a whole month with any occasion, any occasion. So say you have a client who's due November 22nd. And obviously Thanksgiving could be part of that. You have to have decided when your client has told you their due date. I mean, not your client. Actually, this goes before them being your client. It's the prenatal interview. I mean, before they even hire you, you want to know what their due date is. And if you know it's around a time that you don't want to miss that event, you have to decide at that moment, is this worth even having this conversation with these people any further? Now, the really ideal situation that makes it plausible for you to be able to take that client on, because any one of us could say, well, anything, I mean, plus or minus 2 weeks, there's always going to be something that you could possibly not want to miss. So a good suggestion is tell your client, okay, I would love to work with you, but it happens that on November 27th, I will be unavailable for the entire day. If it so happens that you go into labor on that day, I would have a backup person for you to be able to attend the birth with you, the labor during that time. I'd be happy to introduce you to that person, whether it be one-on-one or over the telephone or however you'd like to proceed. But I need to let you know that just specifically on that day, I would not be available. I also want you to know, though, that unforeseen circumstances can arise sometimes. It could be that somebody is in labor at the same time, or I'm sick, or an unexpected event happens in my life that really makes me need to be away from my job. If that were the case, I want you to know the same would be true. I would not have you alone. I would have a backup person for you that I would be happy to introduce you to. How would you like to proceed with that? This is a conversation that you need to have in the interview. Even if there are no events, you should be having part B of that conversation with your clients, because none of us can guarantee 100% that we're going to be with anybody. Because I was just reading some of the doula boards the other day, and this one doula was saying that it was the due date of a client she had, and she knows that doesn't mean that the woman's going to have the baby, but here we are, we're at the due date, and sure enough, she woke up feeling really lousy.
Oh, yeah.
Like the beginning of feeling sick, and she was having a cough, and a cold was happening, and she was quickly asking for lots of input of people, like, what can I take to make this go away before it gets worse? And I was hoping, and I'm assuming, that she also understood that if she got sicker, that she should not go to the birth, that she should send her backup person, which her client would have already known would have been the circumstance, that if an unforeseen circumstance occurred.
Okay, so talk about it with your client prenatally, talk about the situation. And I think with warning, it's fair for you to say there's certain blackout dates. I think what's hard for clients is if you don't tell them and then they get down to the wire and you're like, oh, by the way, even though you contracted me thinking I was available to you, I'm going to be gone this day. I also think,
that's
hearkening back to a previous conversation, you should give minimal information about why you're not available, because
Absolutely.
your client, I get it. I hear doulas talk all the time. You form a personal relationship with your client and it seems friendly, but your client should not be worrying about your kid's birthday party
Nope.
or your husband's plane leaving
All you
or your
have
mom's
to say
whatever.
Is, right. All you have to say is, on that particular day, I would not be available.
Right. Because you just don't want them worrying about you in labor. That's not the way it works. So,
Right.
all right. So we've talk about it in prenatally.
Right. And it's just to address also, Sarah, I completely agree with you that you shouldn't, if you've already contracted with a client and something comes up, like you have the opportunity to go out of town for 2 days and your client is getting closer to their due time, or you're in that on-call period with them, which for most doulas is 2 weeks before their due date and up to 2 weeks after their due date. So she's at 38 weeks. You're now on call. You get invited to go to the mountains for 2 days. Is it right for you to leave? I think that's what you're talking about. The truth is, it really isn't right for you to leave, because you said you would be available to them during those 2 days. Even if they don't have a baby, you said you would be available in case they did have a baby. That said, this is that fine line that I'm not the judge and jury on. This is, for some doulas, they will say, but I did prepare them for unexpected events, and I did tell them that there would be a backup if that were to arise. So I am going to let them know that something has arisen and that I will not be in town for 2 days, and that they're very sorry for that, but that the backup person is going to be on call during that time. And as soon as you're back in town, you'll let them know that, and hopefully they won't have the baby, but if they do have the baby, they'll be in wonderful hands during that time, and apologize for it. If that's something that feels comfortable to a doula, I'm not the person who can say you shouldn't do that. I don't know how I would do that until I was in that circumstance. It would have to be very specific for me to make that choice. So that's why it's something to consider. But if you just don't have a backup person for them, then you can't decide 2 days without fair warning that you're going out of town for 2 days.
Right.
I mean, yeah.
Yeah. I think that makes sense. I used to feel a lot more narrow-minded about, hearing a doula say, oh, I'm on call, but I'm going to go do this thing that's 3 hours away, and there's a 90% chance nothing will happen. And I would think, I would never do that. And, like with everything else in my life, I've mellowed over time. People have much different comfort levels. I am just too anxious and nervous of a person to be 3 hours away when I'm on call, even though 99.9% of the time when you have, especially a first-time mom, 3 hours is plenty of notice.
Right.
I'm too anxious. But if someone else isn't, and they can live their life that way, and that sort of gets into the sort of
that is about
bigger
personalities, though, too,
of like living your life while you're on call. Because I know we have a huge range of doulas listening, newer doulas, more experienced doulas. I think, unfortunately, this is just something you have to learn.
Yeah.
When you're a new doula, it is so anxiety producing, and you're waiting by the phone every minute, and you're like, want to tell your client, I have a 15-minute meeting that I'm not going to be available on Tuesday from 10:15 to 10:30.
And don't tell them.
And you want to be, your phone's on you all the time, as it should be. But you're afraid, even when you take a shower, that somebody's going to call. And that's just part of being a new doula. You can't really rush through that. I think that's just, maybe that's not everybody. Maybe there are some super zen people out there who are like, oh, whatever, it'll happen when it happens.
Well, and all of this is only relevant also, new doula or whatever you are, is if you're actually on call. If you're feeling that way, see, this is what, just to add in there, Sarah, there are people who start feeling that way in the pregnancy with the people. I know,
but if you're a busy doula, if you're taking a few clients a month, you're on call all the time.
Right.
And I've built my schedule so that I'm not on call all the time anymore. I would rather have almost too many clients sometimes. But I mean, there's a lot of doulas that are on, and I have been one of them, that are on call 52 weeks a year.
There's a logic, and that was me. Absolutely, that was me until just recently. And it's not a good way to... It's wonderful and it's not good. It's wonderful and it's not good. I could say that over and over again. It's doable, but it's stressful. But there is a logic, and this question always comes up: how many births should you take a month? And we advise, that you start off by taking one client a month and see how it feels to you. But what a lot of doulas have figured out early on is, if you're on call for one, you might as well be on call for 2 or 3, because of once you're on call, you're on call. But then the other variable, of course, of that is if you've got 3 people who are due, the 1st, the 15th, and the 30th, which is how you could space it out. Mm-hmm. They could all go on the 15th or the 20th, or, a different... So
the one birth I have ever missed, I had a client that was 38 weeks and a client that were 42 weeks, and they went on the same day. And it's the only birth I've ever missed.
And you had a backup, though.
I had a backup.
Right. And so, this is where people say, well, I might as well take on a couple of births a month because I'm going to be on call anyway. But you absolutely still have to have a backup, because of what you just said, Sarah, is that they can go, the ones that are totally not even in your realm at that moment could go into labor. And so could somebody else who's way past their due time or right on their due time.
I also think that number, again, has to do with personality.
Yes, it does.
I know some doulas... I would say it's rare, but I know some doulas who pretty capably juggle 4 to 5 clients a month, and don't miss many births. I think once you're getting past 4 or 5, you're starting to talk about the potential of, 2 or 3 in a row that just leaves you completely dead tired, or missing births here and there, which, if that's okay with you, if you have a good partnership arrangement, then maybe that's okay with you. But for me, 5, I've done 5. It's awful. I'm so worried, because what happens is you have one person call you and go, I feel like something's happening. And then the next person calls you and says, I lost my, I'm having some bloody show. And you're like, you see them all lining up like planes about to take off at the same time in your head. And you're like, you're just worrying. And then 9 times out of 10, it doesn't.
It's so funny because
the person having contractions will stop,
really,
and
it really,
it kind of all works out. But the stress of waiting for it not to work out.
And some people, like you said, are they know how to handle that, and other people, it's more of a struggle. I don't think even those who can handle it, who appear to be handling it, are totally at peace with that. It is stress, period, because they're constantly thinking. But
I remember seeing one doula at the pool this summer, and she was at the pool with her kids in her bathing suit, and she was like, oh yeah, I have a client in early labor. And I was like, how can you be here? And I mean, I honestly swear to God was not judging her. I was impressed that she could be chill enough. It was a first-time mom. It was super early labor, but I was thinking she has to get dressed. She has to rinse the chlorine off of her. She has to get her
kids,
husband was ready to come get the kids at the pool if needed, or she could take him home. But I was like, best case scenario, you're a minimum of an hour or 2 being away. And for me, that's just stressful. For her, she's a very experienced doula. She's been to this rodeo before, and she's like, what am I going to do, not ever go to the pool with my kids all summer?
What she's doing, and this is something we talk about, is as we teach our clients in early labor to do life, we're teaching ourselves to do life, because if you're going to do this work, you have to learn how to do life. But here's the other part of this. There's a couple other facets of this.
Difference between being on call and doing life, and having someone in labor and doing even life, when that's harder for me.
Of course, and I'm not saying that it's not easy. It may be, but for some people, it's not as hard as it might be for you, is what you're saying.
Yes, that's what I'm saying.
I agree. Here's another part about being on call that wasn't relevant to me, but is certainly relevant to other people, because I get asked this question, well, what about if I want to drink a glass of wine? Or what if I'm going out to a social event with my family and drinking is going to happen. Or I love to drink a glass of wine every night. I hear this from doulas frequently. Should I do that? As I said, this isn't. I'm not a teetotaler. I just don't drink. But I didn't have to go through that experience. This is something to really examine. You have to know what is your capacity to drink. Mm-hmm. How does it affect you? I mean, when you are on call, you have to be conscious of the fact that at any time, you hope that you've had enough communication with the client before you're absolutely needed. But some people just all of a sudden have really rapid labors. And are you going to be, one, cognitive enough to be able to do that? Are you safe to drive? Are you going to be sleepy? What are you going to feel? Mm-hmm. And that's something that people have to consider. And the other one I really want to broach is how this affects you in your personal life.
That's the thing. It's so hard for me when someone will say, hey, you want to go to a movie Thursday night? Mm-hmm. And I'm like, maybe.
Yeah.
We'll see. Yeah. Absolutely. If I don't have a client in labor, I'd love to go to a movie Thursday night. But you have to understand as my friend that I could cancel at the last minute. And that sucks.
It can be one of those hard things where people don't want to hear that. And besides friends, which I hope all of you have some friends, it's also if you have a relationship, if you have a partner, how that's affecting them. Being on call affects your life. Besides your own personal life, it's the people who are in your personal life. So it could be a partner, it could be a partner and children, it could be children, it can be your job and your employers, it can be friends like you just mentioned. How is this impacting them? And everybody has a job that has opportunity where we might have to miss an event or two in people's lives that are important to us. But what I've always said, and so people have already heard me say this, but if you're not showing up in your own life as you're showing up in everybody else's life, you really need to pause and consider, is this healthy? Is this good? Or am I doing something that is not really beneficial in the big picture to anyone, most especially me and the people who I love, who I want to continue to love me? There's a high divorce separation rate in this kind of work. You hear about doctors, you hear it about midwives, you hear it about doulas. That on-call thing can wreak havoc. And if you're missing, when I told that story about it was my son, there was nothing that I wanted to do to hurt him. It pained me. The thought that because I chose to go to a birth, he thought I intentionally missed his birthday. He's the person I want to be in my life forever. That client doesn't remember me in the way that I want my child to remember me or my partner. And that's one of the things that, yes, have had two partners through my adult life here, but they had to adjust to and especially nowadays when I don't have small children, I have more freedom to go out on a spur of the moment or go to the beach or go to the mountains or go somewhere. And my partner has had to learn how that isn't always the case, that I can do that because I'm on call. And they mainly have been very accepting of that and understand it. But when I see that it's something really important, I am going to have to step back. And those are those times, though, Sarah, when I think I have made a choice a few times, and I haven't done this often, but I can think of one time in particular where the unexpected was happening, like there was drama going on in my home. And I had to go to a birth, and I was so sick inside because I knew I needed to be at that birth because I had said I would be at that birth, but I knew I had no business leaving my family at that moment. I needed to be there to address what was happening. And I let the client know that, and I got the backup person to come. And it they totally accepted it. They were, because I had prepared them for unexpected, and I did not tell them I'm having a crisis in my family right now and I need to be here. I just said, I am so sorry. Something has come up that I am unable to come right now, and I hope you know that I would never do this unless it was important. Everything's okay, but it's important, and I will not be available, but I do have the backup person that we've discussed. And they were like, it's okay, just take care of whatever you need to take care of. And
if you have a backup person you trust, it's not the end of the world.
And so in the end, I missed that birth, and I am so glad I did, because if I had walked out on my family at that moment, it just would have been, I don't know what it would have been.
Yeah.
But I walked out of those people's lives, and the worst thing that could have happened is they would have badmouthed me for a while. And that would have been terrible, but not as bad as losing, that in my family.
Right.
So I didn't face that often, but that is something to consider also. And I see people get very, this is the word, and I find it, people get very addicted to this work. It's the oxytocin, it's the rush, it's the ego, it's, the exhilaration, it's the specialness of it. And they start to, as all addictions, they start to not pay attention to what is important in their own life. And that's always a worry to me with doulas.
I think what you said before, if you're not showing up in your life in order to show up in someone else's life,
it's kind of hypocritical to me.
That's something I need to hear. It's probably something you need to say as a caretaker, as a doula. It's very tempting. It's very easy to leave your mess and to go into something where you can sweep in
and be the hero.
Be the hero, sweep out, be done, rather than dealing with a mess. That's very
it really
important.
is, because you get praise and joy from those people when you're with them. And it's not to say that we're still not going to miss things. We are. That it's pick and choose.
Yeah.
How many. And I've heard doulas say, and again, I'm not living their life, but I'm always that person who's thinking of the other side of the story. We have this conversation, like I said, in the workshop, and one participant one time years ago, the question proposes, what if the birth is occurring? What if your client is due around the time of a very significant event in your life? And everybody has to look at that. Well, this participant adamantly declared over and over again, even though participants were also asking her questions, that there were no significant events in her life that would keep her from going to a birth. And when people brought up, well, you have small children, what about their significant events? And she said, no, they'll understand. And it was this moment in me, and I guess because I'm the mother of so many and the mother of older children, and also I have been doing birth work for so long, I felt not angry, but I felt very tormented by her her response, because I thought, why would you choose going to somebody's birth over the possibility of your children thinking something is significant and ignoring it?
Right. And you have to sometimes. You have to choose, because there's going to be times when your kid wants to play Ninja Turtles with you, and you have to choose the birth over playing Ninja Turtles.
Right.
Because you are a professional and you committed to do a job and you have to go do it. But there are extreme situations, either a celebration or a tragedy or whatever was going on in your house with just, quote unquote drama, which I think is a buzzword for something that was, I'm sure, a lot more intense and emotional. You have to be willing to. And I think that's really interesting advice, and I wonder a little bit if you've mellowed on that over time, if you've changed or if you've always felt like that. Because
I think I had good teachers in my life who helped me know that. And I think I was always that way. Yeah. But I think that early on I probably did more than I probably should have done. Right. There could have been things there could have been births I could have missed. and gone to certain things. But I will say this, in the end, except for that one child with that one circumstance, I never got that feedback from my family, and I had a lot to family to check in with.
ToRAISE has 6 children and has done thousands of births. Yeah, so, I mean,
not thousands of births,
8,000.
Yeah. But and the reason they could have kept it inside. And I'm sure there were times they were disappointed I wasn't there, but I was always checking in with them though too. It wasn't like I just took it for granted they were okay.
I think it's hard for little kids tend to be like, "Mommy, I want you to put me to bed," and it can be hard for the mother in that situation to say, "No, you're okay. It's okay. Someone, babysitter or
partner,
daddy or mommy or grandmother is going to put you to bed instead," because they need you and they really do need you, but they're going to get over it. But that's different than. There were one time my son went to the ER, and I wasn't at a birth, but I remember thinking I was at a birth event.
Right.
And, I remember thinking, for a split second, would I leave this birth if he were in the ER for a relatively minor injury? He needed stitches. But he was terrified. And of course I would, but I remember thinking, like, how would I handle this?
Well, and that's another question that I think has to be proposed as well to those who have children who are doing this. Even those little ones who feel like, Mommy, I need you. And then she's leaving and we think they get over it. And so they do. I mean, we all go through, we're not perfect and we can't be 24 hours a day. I know some people believe this, but 24 hours a day, every second for our child. We are in our hearts always, I hope. But I think if you're really having a hard time leaving that child, then maybe you shouldn't be doing birth work right now. I mean, I had a long conversation with a doula not so long ago about this exact thing. She has a young baby. And she's still breastfeeding, of course. I mean, the baby's under a year old. She's pumping during births, and she left the birth for a while under circumstances that felt right to her, to go home and nurse her baby and to sleep for a little bit, but to really it was primarily the baby she was missing her baby and her baby was missing her. Mm-hmm. And we had a whole conversation that was this...
Had she gone back too early?
Yeah. And, it was very hard for her because the conversation, but in the end, she said it was extremely helpful because the reality is she's probably gone back too soon. That birth will always be occurring, but that time with her baby and that stress and of worrying about her baby being at home, but also her clients were put into that too. They knew she went home to nurse her baby.
Right.
And so their labor was taking a really long time. So it's all those factors that have to come into play as well. Another part of the on-call is just that commitment period.
Right. So I want to talk a little bit about the commitment period, the time frame, because I think one thing to keep in mind is that while it is you are on call 2 weeks to 2 weeks, there are certain factors to take into account. One is with the vast majority of doctors, they're not going to quote unquote let their clients go 2 weeks late.
Yeah, 42.
And this sounds, what's the word I'm looking for? I don't know what the word I'm looking for is. It sounds terrible to say, oh, well, this client is due 2 weeks before Christmas, but there's no way her doctor's going to let her go 2 weeks before,
Well, that's kind of our reality check.
But right? It's kind of good to know. Now, I will say I had that situation once, and the client switched care providers, which I was thrilled about. She had a horrible doctor. And when I took her, it was a Christmas client. She was due 2 weeks before Christmas. And I said, there is no way that this doctor she's with is going to let her go. She'd be lucky to go 1 week post dates with this doctor. And she changed providers. I also had a situation with my sister-in-law, excuse me, where I was going to be traveling to her birth, and I was trying to schedule a summer vacation. And once her birth was the last birth, once I was done with hers, I was going to go off call and not take any more clients. And so I scheduled this trip for something like 16 days after her due date, because I thought, well, even if she goes 2 weeks post dates, and even if then she's in labor for a long time. I'll still be safe. Well, she was with midwives that let her go to 43 weeks.
Oh my gosh.
And after I had already booked the tickets and everything, and it turned out fine because she had her baby at 41 weeks. But I was like, so I will say, keep in mind, it's rare for someone to go 2 weeks early. It happens and you need to be prepared for it, but it's rare.
And so, right.
So, you know, I that's why for myself, what feels comfortable to me is more like 10 days before and after.
But here's the other thing, a part of that, or were you?
No, go ahead.
Here's a question that comes up is, and some people don't like my response to this one either, but it's the response that I give. You are on call starting at 38 weeks. That's pretty standard for most people, even if you say 10 days, it's 38 weeks, okay? So you start being on call. And at 37 and 4 days, or 36 and 4 days, or 37, you know,
whatever.
Before the 38, she goes into labor and she calls you and you're not available because you're out of town, or you are at another birth, or you had plans to go to the mountains that day. What do you do? And, you know, the truth is, you're not on call at that point.
Yeah.
So it really, if you are available, by all means, go. Your on-call period is not important at that point. But if you had other things or you were out of town, because I know this happened with a doula, she was on her way out of town for just a few days via airport, and it was, I think the client was 36 and a half weeks or something like that, and she called the doula, and the doula was leaving. And so then what the doula did, which was over and above what she had to do, but I'm not surprised most doulas would do this, she didn't decide, of course, not to get on the airplane. She instead called another doula and said, can you be at her birth? You know, she was her backup person. Can you be at that birth? And the other doula said, yes, I'll do that. So she provided the backup for her. But then that doula, who was the backup, had one of her clients went into labor during that labor. And so that wonderful backup doula called a backup doula for the woman. And in the end, the woman ended up having a third doula. But she, you know what the mother's perspective was? Because I've talked to her about this a few times over the years. And she said, I felt so protected and taken care of that these three women were surrounding me, even though two of them actually couldn't be there in the end. I just felt so taken care of. I never for a moment felt like I was alone.
Yeah.
And so, you know, that backup is a huge part of this.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the other part of this, and then maybe we're wrapping up, is you brought up about your son being in an emergency room, and you weren't at a birth; you were at a birth event. And the question that went through,
hanging out with Ina Mae Gaskin.
I remember
Thank you very
that.
much.
I remember it clearly, that experience.
Me and Ina Mae Gaskin are buds. Yeah. I was standing across the room from her, looking at her.
I was driving her around.
You were driving her around,
yes.
yeah.
Anyway.
You really are buds. Yeah. I joke about it. But I'm buds with, what's her name who you love?
Oh, Robbie.
No, Sarah.
Oh, Sarah Buckley.
Sarah Buckley.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Robbie Davis Floyd.
We digress. Sorry.
Yeah, sorry.
Sorry, ladies. And
we do an event here in town where we always have a different speaker. And so we've gotten to
hang out.
ToRAISE knows them through industry stuff, but I've gotten to meet more than my share because of this local event we have.
But anyway, the other question is, if you are at a birth and you do have children, and it could be somebody else in your life. It doesn't have to be children, but that's what came to my mind. And you find out during the labor that that child or that person, your loved person, somebody who you really care about, is sick or seeming to, in your mind, need you. And maybe not just in your mind, but actually needs you. How are you going to handle that? Mm-hmm. Can we remove ourselves from a birth? And what's your thought on that?
And that's true for not just people who have kids, but people who have parents or pets.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Partners or anybody. My thought on that is it depends on the severity of the If I had a kid who was who threw up at school and my partner could easily pick them up and it wasn't a big deal, I would not leave a birth for that. Because I know my partner can handle it and, it's not an emergency. If this was a case of my son had fallen and, was at the ER he was in the hospital for stitches. I decided I would have left for that. So I think it really depends. I guess my basic feeling is that if you feel like it's going to be distracting you at the birth, you're not doing them any favors by staying. I think you have a commitment to these people. And so it's like any other job. I mean, if you were an accountant and your kid called you and was sick and someone else could pick him up, would you go? Probably not. You'd probably let somebody else get him. But if you were an accountant and someone called you and your kid was in the ER,
Right.
I think that if you're going to be sitting there worried and constantly texting and calling to see if somebody's okay, you should get a backup doula and go. I do think you have a responsibility to get somebody there with your client. But I also think if something truly tragic, critical happens, it all goes out the window and you just go do what you need to do.
I think, and that's why I'm asking you, because I think this is the question everybody has to ask. And
what level are you willing to leave for?
And the truth of the matter is, it's something we have to think about. We have to really wrap our head around. But until you're in that circumstance, if you're ever in that circumstance, you don't really know what you're going to do until that moment, because it would depend on the circumstances.
Now, what do you think about this? What do you think about if you're on call and you're sick? You talked about a doula posting about being sick.
Right.
Let's say you're really, really, really sick and your client is maybe prodromaling, or maybe she's just 41 weeks and she's going to go any day. Do you tell her?
Yeah. That's a good one, because I think I've shared on the podcast before that one time I was sick, and this was not, I wasn't a doula, I was the assistant to the midwife.
Midwife's assistant.
Yeah. And I got called to come to the birth, and I went, and I was sick. I mean, I already was sick. I had just gotten sick that day, that night. I felt terrible, just terrible. And I went to the birth feeling bad, but not, I felt sick.
Yeah.
Okay. I went to the birth, and, it was middle of the night, and I was at that birth, and I started getting sicker and sicker, and the baby got born, and I was just feeling terrible. Just really, all I could think was how much I wanted to go to bed, and you know how you feel. And finally I said to the midwife, I gotta go. I'm so sorry. I'm just really sick. I gotta go. And I left. And I remember saying to myself after that was the dumbest thing I could have ever done. I should not have gone to that birth. Not about me, which was bad enough about me, but how dare I have gone sick like that to this brand new baby's and this mother and this other parent's house, carrying those germs and possibly getting them sick. It was bad enough that I was doing it to myself.
Right.
Now, I had the way to leave. I had a way of leaving because she was in charge.
Right.
But if I had been the doula for that birth, I probably would have gone, just like I said, and I could not have left because I was already there, and I would have had to wait till it was all over and done. That's where we have to
Well, so what about, though, if you're sick and you just, because this is where it rides a line for me. This happened to me, I think it was about a year ago or 2 years ago. I got the flu, like the real flu, where you're sick for 4 days and you can't even move. I mean, you can't do anything. And I had a client who was 41 weeks, and I knew she was, or maybe she was 40 weeks. I can't remember. She must have been 40 weeks. And I didn't tell her because I didn't want her to worry about it. And I thought, well, there's a chance I'm going to get well and be done with this by the time she births. And there's a chance that she will birth and I'll just have to tell her I'm sick. I knew I couldn't go. That wasn't the issue. It wasn't do I go or not. It was do I tell her I might not be able to go. And I chose not to tell her, and it worked out. She didn't have the baby for 6 more days, and I was sick for about 4 days. But I wondered if that was unfair to her not to sort of prepare her for that possibility, or if it was the right call to not have her worried and wrapped up. I don't,
know.
in
It's
late
that-
pregnancy, I don't want her thinking, oh, I can't have the baby today because Sarah's sick. Because they get attached to us.
Mm-hmm. It's that fine line. And again, you made the decision based on what you thought was best. And I have to agree with you then.
Well,
but here,
also based on the client. She was
Right.
an anxious type.
right. So
know?
and that's a very good factor that you're bringing up to, Sarah, is would it help them to know beforehand, or is it going to create more worry? Or what if she had gone into labor? Would that have created more anxiety in her at that moment of having the
Exactly.
unknown all of a sudden thrown
me
in her
being
place?
like, yeah, I've been
because
sick for
maybe
3
she would have had
days
days
and
to
haven't
get
told you.
prepared for it.
Right. Right.
And now you've thrown this, and
Right.
it's like, oh my God, I'm in labor and my doula isn't available. So
Right.
which one is it? And that's where, ethically, it's actually an ethics question. How do we handle this, and how do we take care of ourselves and our clients at the same time? Because we want that professionalism.
Yep.
So it's a good question. I would say yes, you should tell them, and I would say no. I remember when you were going through that, trying
I
to
think I might
decide.
have-
I think we discussed it, what you should do, and you came up with the decision. And like you said, it all turned out okay.
Yeah.
I remember being worried that even if you got well, you were going to be run
Tired,
down.
yeah.
And
And I think it
how
was-
was that
yeah.
going to be? Because
Yeah.
after the flu, you
Yeah.
don't instantly feel better.
And maybe it was maybe it was like 8 days later. I can't
Yeah.
remember. I really felt 100% by
Yeah.
the time the birth happened. The last thing, and then we're going to wrap up, I do want to mention is sleep.
Yeah.
Because and being on call. And I think that what can be tough is, so a couple things. So if you're on call, I would say my general advice is live life. If you have an opportunity to stay up late and watch a movie with your partner and you're on call, don't say no just because you might get called at 2 a.m. You got to live your life. You got to do what you would do to some degree if you weren't on call. That said, if you can go to bed a little earlier while you're on call, just, because nothing else is going on, it's not a terrible idea to try to get some sleep because you don't know when you're going to get called at 2 a.m. I have a really hard time. I think I don't have any tips for this. I don't know if you have tips for this. For those nights when you get called at 2 a.m, hey, my water just broke. And you're like, are you having contractions? No, I just wanted to tell you my water just broke. And then you're wide awake knowing something's going to happen soon, but not when. I have a hard time going back to sleep in those moments. I think there are doulas that don't. It just seems to me to be sort of a personality thing. But try to go back to sleep. Try to rest.
My mom used to say when we were kids and she wanted us to take a nap, she'd say, and we'd say, I'm not tired. I don't want to take a nap. She'd go, that's okay. Just rest. That's good for your body.
Yeah.
And, you're still getting the rest. But yeah, it's a hard one because some people click and they're back to sleep. It's not a problem. But for others, it will be. You'll be awake. The main thing is just like you tell your clients, don't get up and start doing things.
Yeah.
Rest. Take the opportunity to try and go back to sleep. Do life like you would. What would you do normally? You would go back to sleep. So try. But yeah, sleep is all part of this. Also, it's funny. It's not funny. It's the sucky part. Right now, I'm kind of on call. And I say kind of because I'm kind of in denial. And each night that I've been getting ready to go to bed, this is what goes through my head. Oh, God, I hope I hope they don't go into labor tonight. Because I don't feel like getting up. It's freezing cold. I don't feel like getting up and having to get dressed in my house and having to go out into that freezing cold and be sleep deprived.
Yeah.
Well,
can I say something about you? Because when I first met you, you were like, sleep doesn't really bother me. I'm someone who doesn't need a lot of sleep. You used to drink a ton of coffee and you just were like, yeah, I know it's really hard for doulas, but I just am a person who doesn't need a lot of sleep. And you've been through a health issue this year and you have all of the sudden been taking like awesome care of yourself and getting all this really good sleep. And now all of a sudden you're like, oh no, I get it now. Like, I think you just never knew what it was like to be well rested because you had 6 kids and you were a doula. And so you probably haven't had 4 hours of sleep in 30 years.
I didn't know that sleep deprivation was what I was experiencing.
It's
I
like
thought
your
it was
personality.
Yeah, I thought that was normal.
You're like, I'm a little irritable, but I'm funny. No,
exactly.
No, you're not like that at all. You're just sleep deprived.
So now I do know what sleep means.
I just thought it was interesting that you were like, actually now that I know what it's like to feel rested, I get why people don't want to be sleep deprived.
That's it. And I do, but what I know, even when I'm going through this, like last night, thinking, oh, I just am so tired. I just can't wait to get into bed. And then pops in my head, well, you might get a call in the middle of the night and you'll have to get up. I think to myself, it'll be okay. So what if you miss some sleep? You'll catch up on it later on. You're not going to be like this all the time.
Yeah.
And that was what I realized, Sarah. That's what I did with every birth I ever did. Every sleepless night I ever had was I just played that game in my head of, it's okay. This isn't forever. I will eventually get sleep. Little did I know it was going to be 30 years before I got it. But
I know.
Yeah.
That's what I do in my postpartums. I do this. It's okay. It won't be like this forever.
Yes.
I'll get sleep one day.
Well, and remember this, everyone. In the end, I think the whole real focus of this conversation is about taking care of yourself. I mean, it really is self-care and your family.
One of the most downloaded topics we've ever had is doula self-care, which is, I forget what episode that is, but
it really is important. And this self-care is also, self-care means taking care of yourself so that you can take care of the other people who are important in your life and that they can take care of you. So, this work is something that is just so beautiful and so awesome and so difficult and so painfully that you really have to do a balancing act with it. And please don't hesitate to remember that you can walk away from birth for a while. You can walk away from it forever, but you can walk away from it for a while because you realize in your life, like I've had to do, where you realize that this just isn't the time for me. But it doesn't mean you can't come back. It just means right now, because there is no way that this is going to stop being a needed profession, let alone just women need women. Women need support. People need support in their life. So what you might find out is that you're not doing birth work. You're doing other kind of support work in your life that doesn't make you have to be on call also.
So to summarize, we have no answers for you. Being on call sucks, and if it's too hard, stop. Your daily inspiration brought to you. No, I know. We're joking. All of that. If you listen, we're joking.
Yes, but thanks, and any input from everybody. Again, we say this at the end of podcasts, but we really mean it. If you have any input about what it's been for you to be on call and how you handle on call, send it to us. Put it on the Facebook page so we can discuss it. It's always interesting because it's a variety of people out there who are doing this work with all different kinds of constitutions and ethics and thought processes behind this work. So thanks, everyone, for listening.
Thanks, everyone, and I hope that if you are celebrating any holidays at this time of year, that all of your babies wait until you're done with whatever celebrating.
Yes.
And if you do end up at a birth on a holiday that you go to willingly, that that's a very special gift that you're giving that family. And that you have happy winter holiday time with your families.
Yes.
Okay. Have a great week, everybody.
Bye.